opening video for a new YouTube series that I'm going to be doing. That is basically me talking to the camera quite candidly about what it means to be transmuting white supremacy and patriarchy daily, right? And all the experiences that I'm having as I intentionally engage this idea of like, as much as I possibly can, be introspective, self-aware, vulnerable, transparent around how I'm moving, what I'm doing, with an intention that I can do less harm to myself and to the world if I am transmuting white supremacy and patriarchy, right? Because white supremacy and patriarchy is all about harm, 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 harm. So in my work with clients, and in my work in creating online course, a self-paced online course with people who are in the course, I'm learning that what's super helpful is doing this work in community. And one of the ways about being in community is hearing other people talk about it. And I've been given feedback that when I talk about certain things, that it's really helpful, because this particular process, we created it, but it's different pieces of stuff that people I admire and respect have been talking about. And when I realized that I was just in a lot of pain and causing a lot of pain to others, I wanted to change that, and I had to really go inward as to what was that about. And for me, it was really realizing that I'm so indoctrinated in the ways and movement and beliefs of white supremacy and patriarchy that it was too much. And so I was like, well, how do I stop doing that? Right? And I am a person who loves self-help books, absolutely. But there wasn't any really self-help books out there that spoke to it specifically the way that I wanted to speak to it. So they were helpful, 100%. And then I just started thinking about quite specifically what am I doing here? Around this thing called white supremacy and patriarchy. Why am I on this path? And it is by choice, and sometimes it feels like it might be easier to just play dumb and be mean, but it's actually not. In the long term, it can be a tough path, but the joys that I'm feeling and the release that I'm experiencing from transmuting white supremacy and patriarchy daily way outweighs me just turning a blind eye to shit and acting like my Western privileged reality is enough. So anyway, the why. I became really exhausted by the implicit and explicit demands of white supremacy and patriarchy on me. Whether that was how I'm supposed to behave with other people, what I'm supposed to share, what I'm supposed to think about, how I'm supposed to move, how I run my business, how transparent I'm supposed to be, how honest I'm supposed to be with myself about what's happening, and this lie that we're always supposed to be strong, that we're always supposed to know what we're doing, we cannot mess up, we have to be perfect. It just was too much. It was too fucking much. So that's why I'm on this path, right? And that's why I want to share it with folks, because I know that there are other folks that are either explicitly taking the course that I've offered, that myself and my business partner Maureen Benson have offered, or they're in coaching with me, and we're having these really great conversations, and I'm realizing that more folks who are intentionally on the path, or are thinking about on the path, or are on a similar path, would find helpful to just hear me ramble about it, honestly. That's so the question of how did I come up with this? Some of it, it's definitely, it's in collaboration. Like I said before, with my partner Maureen, my business partner Maureen. It's in collaboration. The pieces that I really started unpacking for myself were really specifically around pain, like not wanting to be in pain anymore, not wanting to feel like I was an outsider, like just nothing made sense, and it just got to a point in my 40s in particular, in my early 40s, where I just was like, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is this world? What the fuck are people saying? And even people I love, I'm just like, what is coming out of your mouth? And like, the real shift for me was around when Trayvon Martin was killed. I I watched people particularly I went to college with, and I went to a predominantly white college, but I watched people I went to college with who I knew they were white folks, but like say some of the most harmful, mean shit, and with just like entitlement that they just knew all their shit. They knew what they could say, and that I just was really thrown by it. It threw me, and deleted I deleted my social media around that time. I also, I went into the streets and did some protesting, and got, jostled and bumped by Highway Patrol, California Highway Patrol, and it just was like, what the fuck is this? And that's kind of started it started my process as a thinking of like, this doesn't make sense. I don't like this world. And I either have to find a different way to live in it, or I'm going to kill myself. Like, those were really, and I'm not being trite about it, like, those were the two options. I need to find a different way to move, or I am going to end this shit because it's not worth it. And so I kind of gave myself a year to just kind of like figure this shit out. Like, what really makes me happy? How is it that I want to move with other people and with myself that will make me want to live? And that's part of it. The other part was like, I was doing some work with folks in the diversity, equity, inclusion kind of realm with Maureen, who's a white woman, and we engaged with each other with a level of, I think, transparency and vulnerability while facilitating sessions that particularly white folks were kind of thrown by. They don't have relationships with black people the way Maureen does, apparently. And so that was also a ding, ding, ding for us. We were like, well, what is this? How did we develop this? How is it that we have this type of friendship, and what does that look like? And so therein, in me digging deep on my own and digging deep with Maureen, we started thinking about this idea of transmuting white supremacy and patriarchy. So for those of you who are in the course, this really is for folks who are in my course, in our course, but also for folks who are just interested in what does it look like to be really intentional, to choose a very specific process that has the intention to do less harm in the world, and to do less harm to oneself. And that is looking very specifically at the ways in which we've been indoctrinated by white supremacy and patriarchy. For white folks, in terms of white privilege, white resistance, like all these different ways that white folks have indoctrinated the idea of superiority, and don't even know it, right? It's affecting their behaviors and their abilities to have friendships with anyone outside of their norm, affecting their work relationships, affecting if you run organizations, affecting black and BIPOC folks even being able to show up at work, wanting to work with y'all. And then even for BIPOC folks, our internalization of white supremacy and patriarchy, like internalized inferiority, internalized anti-blackness in the black community, in the Latinx community, in indigenous communities. Like, none of us are immune to the impact and the effects of white supremacy and patriarchy. And then, if you start throwing it in there, how we, many of us just move from a very colonized mind and mindset that is trapped in this idea that there's only one way to do it, and it's often a very white, Western, academic, intellectual, action-oriented way. And that is killing us, right? I watched I was part of a thing this morning. I watched a live stream this morning where Jane Fonda was on there, and she said, I loved it. I was like, see, white women can do the work. 'Cause she was like, there would be no climate change if there was no patriarchy. And I think that's yeah, exactly. But to really understand that statement, one has to do a lot of individual work. To understand that and to get that and to know that we are complicit in the fact that climate change exists and that patriarchy and white supremacy continues to thrive. So these videos are based in my experiences of of practicing daily. Sorry for the shaky shake. These videos are me capturing instances that I think would be worth sharing of me transmuting white supremacy and patriarchy. Sometimes it's in the moment. Oftentimes it's after the fact. It's after I've hurt someone. It's after I've hurt myself, and I'm realizing it, and I want to transmute that. Like, what happened? How did it happen? Why did it happen? How do I take accountability, make amends if necessary? And the more I do that, the more it's almost like my brain is rewiring, where I'm able to slow down, take a breath, and see clarity, so that I know a moment is coming where I can either move how I want to move, or move how white supremacy or patriarchy is telling me I have to, or are supposed to move. And so I think of it as this, like, practicing lifting the veil of white supremacy and patriarchy, so that I can see what's my choice, right? That this is my choice, this is my agency. I'm drawing from my power within to move, and as opposed to moving from white supremacy, which is trying to exude power over me, to make me move a certain way in the world. So I will be talking about that. These videos will last anywhere from at least 11 minutes to no more than 29 minutes. I'm going to try to keep it around 11 minutes, and we'll see how it goes. They won't be flashy. Sometimes they will if I get creative and I want to play around. But for the most part, they're not going to be flashy. They're just going to be me talking to you about some shit that went down. And sometimes it's joyous, it resonates. Sometimes it's not so joyous. It's sorrowful, and it's challenging, and it's not how I want to move. So we'll look at all of that and be on the journey together. I really hope that it's helpful to folks who want to do this for reals, because the world doesn't have to be the way it is. It really doesn't. So take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the YouTube.